Jules, then you said, okay, you're going to train. This is what you want to do. You want to train racehorses. That's all you've ever done for the majority of your life, isn't it?
No.
What
No, first of all, once I matriculated, my father said, you are not going to get involved in horses. First of all,
man.
You get a career. So that if you end up divorced with children, you can support them.
Okay.
So I went and became a teacher and taught pre-primary and remedial for 9 years.
Jeez, now you see, that's why we have interesting guests like this, because I didn't even know that. I thought Julie was just from day one a trainer.
Well, there's someone who can help you out with your problems.
With my problems with my reading.
Yes.
Okay.
So when I had really had enough of teaching, I decided to pursue my passion, and I applied to Paul Donation for a job.
Okay.
So I worked for Paul for a year, and then for Johnny Dawson for 4.5 years. And we had a small holding in Drummond, and we decided, Dave and I bought some land behind it, perhaps we could train from the farm. So I took out a license and trained there for 2 years.
I started working for a chap called Snowy Reed, Alan Reed. He was a great jockey.
He won the July.
He won the July, correct. And he was a very, very super person. I learned a lot from him. I worked for him for 2 years. He taught me how to ride beautifully. I rode in a couple of work riders races when I was with Snowy as well. So that was awesome. And then I started working for Tony Finesse. I used to walk past his yard every day and ask, and I was desperate to work for him. And I thought to myself, one day I'm going to catch him, that he's standing at the gate, and I can ask him, because I was petrified of him.
Okay.
I could ask him if I could have a job. Anyway, he walked out as I'm peering in the door, I saw him open the door right there as I walked in, as I was peering in, and he's like, "Can I help you?" And I went, "Oh, I'd like a job." And he said, "Go back and come back in 48 hours later, and I'll let you know." I was like, "Okay." Anyway, off I went, and I met up with him the next week, and I got a job from him, and it was just onwards and upwards. Yeah. He was a hard taskman.
Dixie was a star. He still is a star.
And what is his nickname?
No, it's AD Finesse.
Oh, so you call it Dixie?
So Dixon's his second name.
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh, Dixie.
Yes.
Okay, Dixie.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, him and Margot live in Hillcrest, and I see them every now and again. They popped up a couple of months ago up to the horses and came and had a look. But yeah, so I worked for him for 11 years. He used to go down to Cape Town for the seasons, and then I ran the show up here for them. And then just out the blue one day, he said to me, "I'm going to retire at the end of the month." It was in the middle of the month, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, what am I going to do?" Anyway, I spoke to Dr. Labuschagne, Matthew McGilligan, Tony Steeble, all those old stalwarts in racing.
So
and
Tony
they said,
Steeble's he's in a retirement village where my aunt is, and I'm Schlanger, and yeah, what a man, Tony Steeble, all those gentlemen.
Matthew McGilligan, Richard McGilligan. I mean,
lovely.
I was so blessed and lucky to have worked with people like that. You know, I owned horses, and Dr. Labuschagne said to me, "You've got nothing to lose. Go for it, my girl." And that's what we did, and we built the string up. And Duncan actually joined me. I think after about 2 years, I'd been training. I started training in 2001, and Duncan joined me for a couple of years, and we opened up a yard in Joburg. So we trained at Turpentine in the beginning, I think for about 1.5 years, and then we went on to the Vaal. We trained at the Vaal for about 3 years, and we had great success up there. Had great success racing horses up there, bringing them down to Durban, racing them down in Durban with the high altitude. It's just such a big help. It was a great start for me, and it just went onwards and upwards, which I was very, very lucky about. I've got a son. He's 26 years old now. It was very hard having a child and obviously trying to train horses at the same time, but we got through everything, and my day was a hard day. It was like 4.5 hours driving in the car. I looked after my cousin, Nicola. I put her through school as well. So I had Damon at junior school, Nicola at high school, and trying to run the whole yard here. It was quite hectic. But life goes on, and they've both gone on to do really, really well.
Tess, you've been in horse racing for a long time, so you know most of the people in the game. I mean, you were born into it.
Yep, I had no choice.
Your father's Gary.
He is. Everyone knows him as the grumpy man.
The grumpy man.
Yeah.
No, Pinky and the Brain.
There we go. Com calls him that.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And you got a good pedigree because your grandfather was a top trainer, Desi Rich.
He was. He won the July 1977, and I don't know much about him, but he did love the bar apparently. All
nothing
the
wrong with that.
drinking stories, and that's all I've heard.
Yeah, he trained Lightning Shot.
Yes,
that's
yeah.
right. Leslie Mustard rode him. That's how far I go back.
Yes,
so,
and Leslie
good,
Mustard's
quite.
my uncle, so
Yes.
we kept it in the family.
Yeah. And you were born in Moirava, I presume.
I was, and then we've been in KZN most of our life, but obviously I've been around horses for, not with them all the time, but around them. So my dad is a trainer, was back then, and then we went to the
Academy in Port
Yes.
Elizabeth, yeah.
He actually opened the academy in Port Elizabeth. He started at the KZN one first.
Right.
Yeah. So we were there for my high school career, and then he got offered a job at Adam Kethrow. So he left there, but I stayed in PE for my matric year, which I actually stayed with Clanky and Janet Bardenhorst.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, so Barbara Kennedy was my partner in crime back at the school. So that was exciting. And then I came back and worked for Adam Kethrow as a receptionist, and then moved on to Hillcrest, where I worked for call centres.
Oh.
So I was that person that phoned you and you used to put down
You
on
put the phone on you. Yeah, when that was a terrible job.
Yeah. And then in 2015, my dad got very sick. He ended up having that quadruple bypass and found out he had cancer.
There's not much left of him. His
Yeah.
kidneys missing
There's
and
always
all sorts of
something,
things.
hey?
Yeah.
So I was actually forced to run the yard while he was in hospital and just never left.
Let's talk about how it all started for you. My stock standard question. Alison Wright, take it right back to when you were a kid, which was just the other day. How did it all start for you, horse racing?
Warren, my mom and her sister were in show jumping, and my mom then started working for Benny Lobel and a couple of guys in Zim as assistant, and eventually took out her own license. So from little there were horses. My first pony I got at 8, so it's always been around, and she then stopped training for a bit, and we then took out a yard in Zim when it was sort of floundering a bit, and Kevin and I ran the yard. My mom was involved, and and then we moved here in 2003.
How did you meet Kevin? Obviously through racing in Borrowdale.
Well, my mom was training at the time. I was riding work. I was actually dating another jockey, and then landed up with Kevin.
Grumps, as we love to call him affectionately. Good
Yeah.
man, good friend, wonderful horseman, and he would never take offense at his nickname being Grumps, but he's just a wonderful companion, a wonderful partner of yours, and a husband, and great father, and great horseman, and he's lovely, Kevin.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, we've been dating since I was 16, so...
Okay.
It's been a lifetime just about, but yeah, it's gone well.
How did you find out about horses? How did you find out about breeding? How did you find out about horse racing? How did it all start for you?
Well, 1996, I wanted to move to Pietermaritzburg, but to practice as a lawyer.
Okay.
I had hunted a place to stay where I could stay with my parents, who were farm addicts themselves. So I then landed into this place. I offered it, and then I got possession of it. That was 1996. Having my background as a lawyer and a conveyancer, I thought that's what I was going to do in a quiet space. Lo and behold, at that time, the turmoil in the country was not good. the atmosphere in farm areas was not very well. So I was advised by my father to try and get the next option. So I then let out the farm up until I took it over in 2007. That is now 10 years later. 10 years later, I come back to the farm, I renovate it, and I established something to do, which was naturally would be agriculture, because it was agricultural farmland. It was an intensive vegetable farming when the previous owner was using it, so I had to resuscitate that. So I did that by erecting the tunnels. So I started to do tomatoes, and then I did peppers. I appointed a farm manager, an ex-Sedara student, and then we were working with that. So I'd come quite often to look what's happening, up until one day I met a neighbor by the name Anton Proctor. He requested to see me, and then we met, and then he asked, what am I doing? And then I told him. Then he asked, what activities am I doing at the farm? I told him what I was doing. And I said, but why are you wasting your time? Can't even break even with what you are doing. I said, I just needed something to have the farm active.
Yes.
He said, no, but I've got an idea for you. I'll introduce you to horses. I said, no. This farm is too small. It's only 11 hectares. And there's no way that I can do that. I was just imagining horses requiring tracts and tracts of land. He said, no, I'll show you how. It's possible. I'll introduce you to the value chain of the horse breeding value chain. So one day we had breakfast together. He took me through, and having explained all what he explained, I said perhaps the breeding is what is suitable. Actually, that's what he was selling to, that I'd rather do breeding. And he said he would take me by the hand to show me how it would work.
Yes.
Right, then we started there, and he told me that, you know what, I want you to understand it from a very highest level, so that when you decide, you know what you are in for. So I'll make appointment for you to visit the best dads in the Cape, and then also I'll make an appointment for you. I'll organize for you to go to London with the Debbie to see what this business of horse racing is. It was like a joke, but within no time, then I go home to meet his wife, Judy. So Judy, this is what Anton is telling me about. Do you think it's true? I said, oh, well, trust him. So then Anton organized the trip for me and Judy to go to the Derby. So we went to the Derby. Well, we were fortunate enough to be sharing a dining area just next to the Queen. So that's how high level it was. So I was introduced to almost international breeders, and they were telling me all the stories of breeding. And one thing I took home was that it's a business that has more to do with luck than with what you do. Yeah. Okay. And then I was scratching my head because I've never known myself to be a lucky person. I know myself as a hard worker. Whatever I have is because I had to sweat for it. So if this I need some amount of luck. So when I come back, so we have a debriefing session with Anton, and then I'm telling him all the stories of what I captured in the Derby, and what my fears are and what my aspirations are. Yes, he said, of course it is luck, but that luck always has to be accompanied by hard work. So the fact that you are a hard worker.
Then when you heard hard work, you were happy.
Yes. Then I knew. Then it means me. You know? So I can actually relate to it. At least there must be some input from your side to get any kind of results.
At what stage of your life did you think to yourself, well, I want to be a trainer, I want to be a horse lady, I want to be involved in horses? How did you hear about this wonderful industry?
Well, when I was young, when I was 7, my mother died, and my mother was a very good sportswoman. She got a gold medal at the Empire Games for diving, and she was very much a sportswoman, but she unfortunately died when I was 7.
Sure.
So my dad was deputy mayor of Durban then, and he and I went to stay with his brother. and the neighbors rode horses. So they took me up to the riding school to try and take my mind off my mother dying and one thing. Anyway, that's where the bug bit, and I really, you know, when I was 7, I even had my picture on the front page of the Mercury jumping. I mean, I loved it, I enjoyed it, and I seemed to be reasonably good at it, even when I was young. Then my dad, Cyril Milne became mayor after my dad, and he had racehorses. And he said to me the one day, I will give you a horse off the track. And I think I was 10. Oh, that made my day. You know, it was, anyway, he gave me a black filly called Petty Palais. She'd won 3, and she was by Netherwood from Plattsburgh stud. And so we decided I jumped her for about a year or so, and then my dad took me to school in Switzerland, so we put her in foal. And cut long story short, she had a foal, which incidentally was absolutely useless. And Dad was very friendly with Douglas Sanders, Chris Sanders' dad, so he said, oh, you must give it to Tony Finesse to train. So they went off to Newmarket, and then shortly after that, Newmarket closed, and he came up to Summerford. But Summerford, of course, wasn't like it is now. There were no shops, a lot of the grooms left, and there were 3 or 4 trainers here, and they were really battling because they couldn't get the horses out. Grooms weren't, a lot of the grooms weren't here. So I said to Tony, can I come and groom a horse? He said, never mind groom it, you better come and ride it, you know. So anyway, that's how I started learning to ride work as opposed to show jumping. And I was with Tony for many, many years. I was obviously still at school. I was 16 when Summerfeld opened, and I was still at school. So I obviously could come on the holidays and on the weekends and ride work. And then I just got so into it, I ended up working for Tony as an assistant trainer. He was my mentor. I learned so much from Tony, and I was with Tony. Oh God, I was assistant to him for about 10 years, but I was probably with him for 15 years. And my heart was just racing.
That was it, you were racing over there.
That was it. Then I went to Herman Brown for 2 years, and then I got my own license in 84.
How did you hear about racing? I know, and Andrew knows, you come from a racing family, but tell us more, because there are people out there that don't know your story.
Yeah, Warren, you know, I was born into racing. My dad started off as a jockey and took his trainer's license out in 1976, quite a while ago. And yeah, just a natural progression. You know, growing up as a kid, being in the yard every day, I can't actually think of anything else that I wanted to do other than be a horse trainer. So I've most certainly fulfilled my dream of wanting to be a trainer, and it seems to be going good.
Your sort of path that you planned, obviously you when you were a child, you were around horses, etc., and your dad was as a jockey and then became a trainer. And then I suppose the first move, is it safe to say the first move was that you and your dad took out the joint trainer license, and that sort of was the first step to get things going? Yeah,
you know, it probably came a bit sooner than I expected. My dad had a stroke just over 3 years ago, and that kind of expedited the movement into us joining forces. And you know, there's a plan for everyone. It came at the right time in my career, and I was, blessed to have a horse like Comet, who's given me a July winner and a Met winner, and that's a plan that's laid out for us, and I couldn't be more grateful.
Where did it all start for you, racing and horses, and what was your first experience with a horse? Take us back to that day.
Oh my, I was a youngster. I was like a little kid when I had my first horse, and but the funny thing was we stayed in town, so we were always sneaking him in from the farm and keep it there on weekends.
Okay.
So that was my first. I've always been horse crazy, and so I had my first horse. He was called George, after a little crush that I had. I was like 6 years or 7 years old. So that's where it started. But I never was into the horses up until I went to America in 2000, and that was also at a point where I was managing piggeries and I just couldn't do it anymore. And someone said to me, "Oh, you know what? There's in the Farmers Weekly, and there's ads of going as an intern into America." And there was a couple from South Africa that had a stud farm there. And so I was just like, I've got nothing to lose. Send up my stuff, my CV, everything. It was a week later, they said to me, "Oh, you know what, we would like to have you there, and would you like to come on?" And I was like, "Sure, fine." And I literally packed up everything, told my family, and I headed over to America, and I was there for 14 years in the horses. So yeah, it was.
Whereabouts in America?
I was for a year in Kentucky. I was working at the breeding farm there, and then I went up to New York State.
Okay.
And it's also a South African guy that has started up on his own. But I also did work for Becky Thomas, Sequel Stallions.
Okay.
She's quite a well-known breeder and panuka in America. She's got ties with Mickey Goss. When Summerville was still running under Mickey, they still keep in contact. So she knew she'd like to have all the South African interns, and she just think that we were really good hard workers.
South Africans are good hard workers. Most of us, anyway.
I was just going to say, true.
You've only been involved in horse racing a couple of years, you and your husband and your family. But how did you hear about horse racing? How did you hear about horses? Where did it all start for you?
We started coming to horse racing for many years, Barcy and myself. We loved the July.
Okay.
So we came here, and when the children were still young, they actually joined us, and they, to get tickets for a July those years wasn't easy. Okay. You had to pay a lot of money, and you sat in those tents, and you didn't really see the horses. You had to look on the screen, and I always said, to Barcy, I want my own racehorse, and I would like my own wine farm.
Okay.
So now I've got the
That's
horses.
not a bad idea.
How's that for an exactor? Horses and wine, nothing wrong with that.
So now I have the horses, and they eat all the money for the wine farm.
Yeah, couldn't quite go to both. Yeah, absolutely. So they're eating all the money for the wine
But
farm.
the July it's a bit of a bun fight when you're on the other side of the tents there.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And now to be an owner, can't describe what the feeling was just to have a horse running in that main race on July Day. It was just such a privilege, and I couldn't believe the dream come true.
And so early in your career, Suzette, so early in your career, because some owners wait tens of years to have their winner, never mind run in the July. I mean, to have it happen so quickly really is you're quite blessed.
Yes, no, we are. We're really blessed, and I can't say that without saying, I always give all the glory to God. You can't, we would never be where we are if it wasn't for Him.
That is a subject, one never wants to talk about, and I must just apologize to the viewers. We are recording in the Durban View, and all the preparations are underway for the big global team horse racing event that's taking place tomorrow night. We're going to talk more about that later. So they're testing sound, they're testing music, so do bear with us. If you hear a bit of noise in the background, that's what's happening, preparing to make a fantastic evening for you tomorrow night. Religion, politics, all those things we don't like to talk about because they're sensitive areas. But I'm happy to broach the question of religion with you because, you and your husband and your family, like many others, are very religious, and you're happy to let people know that. It's your choice, and you stick by it, and I think it's something to be really proud of.
Yeah, that's something that I feel strongly about. So I would never want to offend anybody.
Sure.
But that's my thing.
Correct, absolutely. If one is religious, you're religious. If you're not, you're not. You've got to respect one another's views.
Well, my daughter's a field guide.
Yes.
And the two things you're not allowed to talk about is politics and religion.
Is that part of the rules of the rules of work? Okay,
yeah.
But lovely. Okay. How do you, Alec, you've got a lot of horses, and as I say to everybody, we're going to be jumping around a bit, and that's what makes the discussion so enjoyable. You have quite a few horses in training. How do you and Barcy sit down and work out, well, I want these 2 to go to Port Elizabeth, or Quebec as it's now known, or I want these 5 to go to Joburg, 2 to... How do you allocate which province you want to race in?
See, what happened is you asked now about how did we come about with racing, and we were sitting at our mine once. And
sorry to interrupt you. Correct. Go back to that because we didn't finish there about how you got involved in racing. Sorry. So
we
carry
were
on with
sitting
that.
there, and I said I would love to have a racehorse.
Yes.
And one of the guys that were there said that, but he knows someone in horse racing. So that was Bertie Mayberg, and he's at APSA, and he owns racehorses, and he was with Corey Lensley.
Okay.
So he phoned me and he said, but he's going to an sale, and would I mind if he look at a horse there that he marked on the catalogue, and I said yes, please, and that's how I came about What a Poet.
Okay, so that was your first
That
racehorse.
was my first racehorse, and What a Poet is now in my garden, right there at my window, in a paddock. So, and then we went to Corrie Lensley, and Corrie and Emmy are just the most wonderful, wonderful people.
Corey's having a lot of success,
Yes.
which is just wonderful to see. He's come from Kimberley, he's had to relocate, and he really is doing well, is Corey, and just shows how good a trainer he is.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and that was Kimberley, Suzette, where you started.
Yes,
that was
so
your
we
whole
started
operation
with
started
Kimberley,
in Kimberley.
and Bertie also then phoned John Freeman and said, listen, yes, a lady that wants to get involved. John Freeman phoned me immediately. He said, there's a horse that they bought. Would I like to go in partnership with them? And that was Marco Polo. And it started from there.
Then escalated.
And
Yes.
what did I say? The rest is history. And you also got bitten by the disease we've all got, African horse sickness.
Oh, yes, that's for sure.
Champion owner of last season. That must have been one of your real finest achievements. Pressure comes along with it, but you enjoyed that roller coaster ride, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I must say, I didn't even know that we were in the running for it. We went to Rebekstad with Chris Snape, and Chris said, I think you could be second on the lock. And I said, what lock? And he said, no, the owner of the year. And I said, where do you see that? And he showed us where to look at it. And that was the worst thing he could ever do, because Barcy was looking at that lock every day. And then we got into it, and we said, okay, now we have to run the horses now, and we have to do that. And everybody was game, and it was so lovely with the trainers,
everybody supporting
the
you,
horses there and supporting us. And I don't think it's always easy for a trainer, because they do have the other owners in the yard that also competing for it.
Yeah.
So, but it was lovely, and it was so nice, just when they announced, okay, now we all, and it actually came down to that last day with Mariah that won.
Yes.
So it was really a nice feeling.
Yeah.
And then the first person was Mr. Van Niekerk. He phoned me and he congratulated me, and then Gaynor phoned and she congratulated. So it was, the three in the running was so nice, and we were supporting each other, and with every win, the WhatsApp messages went through saying congratulations, because now the one is in front and the other one. Competition is always nice. That's why we do it.
Yeah.